Good afternoon, and welcome to today's webinar featuring the Disaster Debris Recovery Tool, Materials Management for Debris Planning and Emergency Response. This seminar is sponsored by the EPA Sustainable Material Management, SMM, Web Academy. My name is Christine Beeling, and I work for EPA Region 1, and I will be moderating today's webinar. And while we wait for the others to log on, I would just like to follow a few housekeeping items. By now, you should have the GoToWebinar application running, and you should see the welcome presentation on your screen and a copy of today's slides in your handout box. We encourage you to ask questions throughout the webinar. Please use the GoToWebinar control panel and type your question in the area that says question, click send to submit. Please type your questions throughout the presentations. We will address as many questions as time allows at the end of today's presentations. After today's seminar, there will be a short evaluation. Please take a moment to fill it out. Your feedback is vital for us to continue reaching high-quality speakers and information to meet your needs. Now let's begin. Thank you for joining the December 18th edition of the Sustainable Material Management Web Academy. We are happy to have you participate in our session today, hosted by the Environmental Protection Agency to provide training and networking opportunities to state and local governments, non-governmental organizations, and other stakeholders interested in sustainable materials management. Next slide, please. Today's webinar will feature 4 speakers discussing EPA's Disaster Debris Recovery Tool and their experiences with the tool. I am joined by 3 colleagues from EPA's Region 5 office located in Chicago, Illinois, Camille Lukey, Lucy Stanfield, and Brandon Purcell. I want to note that Region 5 initially developed this tool for their states within Region 5, and the last 2 years the tool has expanded, as you will see today. Our 4th speaker is Monty Frank, who is with a tribe in the East Central Minnesota. For more information on our speakers, please check our EPA SMM website. Slide 3, please. Again, please feel free to type your questions throughout the webinar. Please note today's disclaimer. And now on to our speakers. While we switch the presentations, I have the pleasure to turn the webinar over to Camille Lukey, who will facilitate the next part of the webinar. Camille, it's all yours.
Thank you, Chris, for that introduction and for giving us the opportunity to share the Disaster Debris Recovery Tool with all of you participating on the webinar. Our goal today is to provide you with enough information and resources so that you can go back to your community and either use the tool in your own work or share it with a colleague. So to jump right in, here is a screenshot of the Disaster Debris Recovery Tool, which we often refer to as the DDRT. It was created in 2008 and contains 12 types of recovery facilities, recyclers, and landfills that manage disaster debris. The interactive map provides contact information and accurate locations of over 6,000 facilities throughout Region 5 and our border states that are capable of managing the different streams of disaster debris. So today's webinar outline will look like this. We'll be covering concepts today such as what is the DDRT, its purpose, data partners, and users. We will also hear from our featured speakers, Monty Frank and Brandon Purcell, on how they use the tool, and as well as how the DDRT can connect to sustainable materials management. Finally, Lucy will run through the tool using a flood example at the Bad River Band in northern Wisconsin. So this is a screenshot of EPA's Office of Resource Conservation and Recovery Planning for Natural Disaster Debris Guidance document. And it will be available in early 2019, and they are updating it from their previous guidance document that was first released in 2008. And the document guides states, local, and tribal governments on how to create a disaster debris plan. A key part of this guidance document is to inventory disaster debris management facilities, and the tool will be listed as an available tool in this new update. This is a photo taken after a tornado in Washington, Illinois in 2011. And it really depicts both how wide the variety and large the quantity of disaster debris that can be left after disaster moves on. So we currently have just over 6,000 total facilities in the tool. This is a snapshot of the distribution of the types of facilities that we have. And you know, again, Chris mentioned that we are expanding to other states, and we're in the process of doing that. This is just the distribution of facilities of our current 6 states in Region 5 and our border states, so 13 states total. You can see that most of our facilities are recycling facilities, with only a small portion being landfills. The tool is really meant to promote the recycling and recovery of disaster debris, leaving landfills as a final option. Our goal is currently to update about 33% of the records each year, so that the entire database is updated every 3 years. We pull our data from a variety of different sources, including state agency websites. Our states maintain these lists of active permitted construction and demolition, and municipal solid waste landfills. These are going to be our most easy category to update because they're regulated. Some states also maintain lists of recyclers for certain categories, such as composters. We also pull information from national associations, federal databases, and tribal facilities. National associations maintain directories of their member facilities for composters, metal recyclers, in other different categories. Some examples include U.S. Compost Council, Construction Materials and Recycling Association, and Institute of Scrap Recycling Industries. We also use federal databases for our data, such as RCRA Info and SAM.gov. EPA's RCRA Info database lists active, permitted hazardous waste landfills. SAM.gov is abbreviated for System for Award Management Disaster Response Registry, and it is used by FEMA and Army Corps. It's a federal government website that businesses can register to do business with the U.S. government. And we pull our demolition contractor information from that website. And lastly, we recently requested facility information from our 35 Region 5 tribes that would be interested in having their information included in the tool. So here is a screenshot of Region 5 Disaster Debris Recovery Tool homepage. From here, you have access to all 3 formats of the data. And this includes data layers, our standalone web application, and raw data. You also can see below that we have links to our state disaster debris management plans. So one of the available formats of our data is available through this EPA Environmental Dataset Gateway. It's available as raw data that can be downloaded as a geodatabase, and it comes in an Excel spreadsheet. Second, we have our data available in ArcGIS Online. This is going to be available for the more technical GIS user that is looking to conduct analysis with our data. Any partner that has an ArcGIS Online account can search and add these layers to their own maps and applications. And then lastly, we have our standalone web application. It is hosted on an external EPA server, so EPA, other federal, state, and local partners can access it. We do recommend, if you are accessing the tool with this web application, to use either Google Chrome or Firefox, because some tools will not display correctly in Internet Explorer. So since first publishing the tool in 2008, we have shared the tool with state, tribal, and local emergency responders and planners in the solid waste emergency response and GIS programs. And this leads me to our first featured speaker, Monty Franck, on how the DDRT was used to find facilities in his disaster debris management plan. So I'd like to turn it over to Monty.
Well, thank you for the opportunity to be on this webinar today. It's really nice that we have the ability for a tribal consultation on the regional level to do this. I think this was a unique opportunity that Region 5 did for the tribes in Region 5, since there are 34 tribal nations, to reach out on this debris tool. And it started out, I think, in a very good way of being hosted by a tribe, which was the Fond du Lac Band of Chippewa Indians, and many of us attended that first session to gain the information on this tool and how, as a tribal nation, we can utilize that within our own sovereign communities. Granted, we're all individual tribal nations, and I know when you always stress that every tribal nation is sovereign and one tribe is one tribe, which I think is very important. So how we use this tool is it can be very different per tribal request or tribal uses. Next slide. So this is the next slide. Just shows where the Mille Band of Ojibwe is. We are in East Central Minnesota. We have tribal lands in 3 East Central Minnesota counties. We're what is known as a checkerboard reservation. So we have tribal land that's basically within 85 miles of our main tribal community. We have 4 districts that we serve, and that falls into all of Region 5, but also in Minnesota falls within 2 public safety regions and also 2 public health regions for planning and response on the local and regional level also. Next slide. And this photo here is actually the training that we participated in up at the Fond du Lac Reservation at the Black Bear Casino, getting our first introduction to this into the DRT tool and how we can utilize that for our tribal nations, and the fact that it could be a very valuable resource. And for myself, it was very nice to get I wouldn't say a pre-design, but a very good starting process for debris removal. Because I think for any disaster we have, it's always a concern about trying to get things removed properly and safely. But I think especially in tribal nations, the fact of anything that could disrupt our ability to hunt and gather, practice our spiritual practices or cultural practices, can be very detrimental without having proper debris management. Because the last thing we want to do is possibly jeopardize any of those abilities to do that. So this was a very good training to learn exactly what EPA would be looking or suggesting to do for that, and to give us a base plan to operate from. And I think all the tribes that were there were probably going to be taking this back to their home tribal community and trying to use part of the plan or implement it in their tribal emergency operations plan for future planning, because it was a very useful guide. You want to go next? So here we're just again in the classroom learning what this tool can be used for, and how the DRT, the components of the plan could be utilized within tribal nations, and allowed all the tribes that attended that day to ask a lot of good questions and get feedback about using the tool within their tribal community to really find a very helpful way to make sure that we can protect our natural resources from any harm caused by debris. And next slide. So for what we did with the Mille Band is we just looked at this tool, as you can see in the diagram, and just seeing where some of the tools were utilized in the local area here for the DRT. And you'll see for the Mille Reservation, we have the green dot showing that the tool was utilized within our tribal community. Next one. So with that, the one thing that it was very helpful with Region 5 And that's one thing I will stress that Region 5 does have very good tribal consultation with the tribes, especially I found with just my tribe especially, was being able to reach out to them and ask them for technical assistance in reviewing my or the band's debris management plan within our all hazard operations plan. The thought being, which was if we had any type of incident on tribal lands, which our EOP would be really taxed more with a larger scale incident that maybe we could possibly handle. And if we would need outside technical assistance, especially like from EPA in Region 5, then our debris management plan would follow their guidelines or recommendations. So that way, if they would come on scene, they would have a good sense of where we were in our debris management operations, following their guidelines or protocols, so we can make sure that our tribal lands and air and water quality is being protected by proper debris management. So with that, it was really nice enough to actually send my parts of my plan out to Region 5 to Dolly Tong and just let her review what we had in our plan and provide me any suggestions or updates to really make sure that our tribal operations plan in the area of debris management would be following recommendations by EPA with the DRT tool, so that proper debris management systems, policies, procedures, how-tos could be followed in a good way, so that way all debris could be managed properly and safely within our tribal lands. Next slide.
Thank you, Monty.
Yep.
Oh, sorry, did I interrupt you? Continue.
No, go ahead.
Right.
Yeah. So anyway, so where we're at now is that has been done, and because of that, I believe our debris management section of our plan is much stronger and robust because of the hard work that Region 5 did with the EP with this DRT tool, that really I think provided us a useful guide, because I think in the age of dealing with debris, it is more complicated than people think it is. You know, we used to think of debris mostly as, you know, maybe some, you know, woody debris, things like that. But just by the photo that you showed, it shows how much debris is intermeshed from a incident that could affect any type of land base. And so having a tool that can help, you know, tribal leaders, our Turks and Circs and other incident management systems to understand and to properly start managing debris is a very valuable tool that we're very appreciative of. And I know just for myself, having that proper tribal consultation from Region 5 and helping me look at my plan when I was updating it to make it more stronger and robust based on this DRT tool. Thank you.
Thank you, Monty. I appreciate you taking the time to share your perspective with us. And now Brandon Purcell will speak on his experience using the tool as part of an emergency response exercise.
All right, hi everyone. Thanks, Camille. Yeah, again, my name is Brandon Purcell. I am an environmental engineer and project manager here at EPA Region 5. My day-to-day job is as a project manager in our River Corrective Action Program. Most states have some version of a River Corrective Action Program. Maybe it's more enforcement oriented, or maybe it's more voluntary. But in some capacity, states and all the federal regions will have some sort of program. And my duty here in Region 5 is to clean up active facilities all across the upper Midwest. I've assumed a lot of additional roles in my regular day job, mostly because I have a hard time saying no when somebody asks for assistance. And so one of the roles that I took on was as part of the chemical waste management team. I've been on the team since about 2012. And this past year, I was a team lead to run our annual exercise. The chemical waste management team is a team within our regional incident management team. Now, if you're on the phone, you're from EPA and you're from another region, you may have an IMT at some capacity. We tend to go a little overboard on our disaster response preparation, but you can never be too prepared, especially when you have something like tornado disaster in Illinois, like what was on the slide earlier. Together, between the chemical waste management team and the IMT, our duties are primarily to provide behind-the-scenes planning and support for disaster response activities in the field. We've deployed in the region and then in other regions as well at various capacities. We're as I said, we're mostly behind the scenes. But sometimes we'll even dispatch out to other areas and just be physically present. So I'm going to talk about how we employed the DDRT this past exercise. The regional IMT exercise is 3 days, and it's intended to provide a refresher for those on the team who have not deployed to a disaster recently. And in a lot of cases, fortunately, most of us don't deploy very often. But it's also a chance to employ new techniques and new technologies available to EPA staff. Again, since I started in 2012, our employment of this DDRT has changed. The tool has changed. The structure has changed quite a bit. The software has changed quite a bit. How we've utilized this has changed quite a bit. So this past year, we kind of went all in and using this everywhere we possibly could. And I think it made our exercise go extremely smooth this year, smoother than I think I've seen in the past. So we utilized it like I haven't seen. So some of the details regarding this exercise, it was based on a simulated wildfire event in Wausau, Wisconsin, which is in Marathon County, Wisconsin. And I want to emphasize that it is a simulation. It is not real. This did not happen. If you have friends in Wausau, do not ask them about the fire because they will not know what you're talking about. Just kind of tell you a little bit about Wausau in the area. It's pretty forested. There's a lot of outdoor activities. There's a lot of suburbs and towns spread about. It's a very nice area. I go snowboarding there about once a year. And by utilizing the DDRT like we did, allowed us to quickly identify a lot of disposal locations, a lot of staging locations, and it even has capability to kind of map out transit routes, which becomes really useful when you have kind of surprises like what was simulated in our exercise, such as road closures and things like that. You can really map out all of your plans for your operating period, whatever that might be. Next one. So this right here is a kind of a summary of what was developed thanks to the DDRT and the work that the IMT team did, as well as our chemical waste management team. It's been used since 2015, and both the web application and the ArcGIS platform layers were used in this year's exercise. And Camille talked about that a little bit earlier. So this screenshot kind of shows the situation report that was developed at the end, and it kind of highlights the responsibilities that we had and that we successfully carried out. We were in charge of finding 2 suitable staging areas for equipment and waste, and it included household hazardous waste, electronics waste. We had some issues with asbestos, pharmaceuticals, and then some other things that you might come up with, like such as gas cylinders from abandoned buildings and whatnot. And again, I stress, this was totally simulated. It did not actually happen. And one of the tasks we were responsible for preparing or coming up with was a disposal plan for specific waste streams. And because of how easy it was to use this tool, we were able to come up with a disposal plan pretty quickly, and it really helped kind of streamline and expedite a lot of our response activities. And so this was an actual event. Pretty much what we would be able to do is just kind of hand this out after the first day or so, and everybody would just kind of be able to have at it. Next one. So this is just kind of an example of a very crude example of what we kind of put together. Again, Wausau, it's kind of forested, some suburbs and towns, so there's really not a lot going on in terms of waste disposal activities. There really isn't a lot of demand for it. So if you're in a more remote area, it would be kind of hard to kind of track down some of this information. But the tool is still able to do it. All the data exists, and we're able to access that and find everything within I believe it was a 50-mile radius is what we were looking for. That's kind of what we were kind of stuck doing. So you can see we identified 2. On the left side, you have a a layer list, and it shows the e-waste and the household hazardous waste disposal facilities, and on the right, you'll see that little drop down over there on the right. It has all the things that it can and cannot accept, and that's just based on information that was pulled from Worker Info and other databases that are available that Camille talked about earlier. And then this last one, this is a very useful tool. We had this up almost the entire time during the exercise. It's a very useful communication tool. This example, it shows the quantities of containers collected. It shows locations of all the staging areas that we had up, the disposal facilities for asbestos, hazardous waste, and other kinds of landfills. Like I said, we had it up pretty much the entire day. So the benefit of this tool and how dynamic you're able to be with this tool, it kind of allowed us to update and keep everyone apprised and informed in real time throughout the entire exercise. So it's essentially my role here. I think every tool deserves kind of like a good marketing team, and you can kind of see me as like Region 5's kind of Yelp reviewer. I think it's a great tool. I think it has a lot of capabilities. Like I said, it's evolved a lot since 2012, and it's going to keep evolving. I know that much. So all I can leave you with today is just to tell you to stay tuned.
Thank you so much, Brandon. All right, so next I'll be speaking on how the tool can be used for everyday materials management. So the tool was created for planning and managing disaster debris, but the facilities in the tool are not necessarily disaster debris specific disposal sites. So a colleague of mine in Region 5's Material Management Branch has told me multiple times that, this tool, she does not only use this tool for disaster debris. So I sat down with her and I asked her more about it, and she explained some of the scenarios that she's used the tool. So she was saying that she's used the tool in conjunction with our solid waste costing tool to help a number of tribes in our region to create waste management plans. Now, the solid waste costing tool is essentially promoting cost effectiveness of solid waste management plans, as the name implies. And the DDRT was used to find multiple recyclers in the area so that the community could then use cost competitiveness to find the best contract. The DDRT can also promote cost effectiveness by finding waste disposal sites that are in close proximity to transportation routes of the tribe, thus reducing mileage for trucks and lowering gas costs. And also in rural communities, waste may be transported out using trains. And so the DDRT allows you to visibly see the best option of disposal sites near whatever transportation route works best for your community. The DDRT can also be used for cleanups and as part of the green remediation program. This photo shows the demolition of the former General Motors Willow site in Ypsilanti, Michigan. The Racer Trust redevelopment managers could find available demolition contractors and construction and demolition recyclers using the DDRT. The DDRT can also be used in response efforts. For example, we have a Superfund site in East Chicago, and the Superfund site excavated the lead-contaminated material, the soil, and they needed to find replacement soil to fill those holes. So instead of paying the high cost of the topsoil, they were looking for composted material. So they used the DDRT to find composters in the area to then take the composted material to refill those holes. And actually, IDOT, Illinois Department of Transportation, has actually put in their state requirements that after a state-funded project, that they require compost to be used other than topsoil. So we're also seeing regulations changing as well. And now Lucy Stanfield, who is the other co-lead in Region 5 of this tool, she will be presenting on the Bad River Band flood, and we'll take you through a short demonstration of the tool.
Thanks, Camille. And we just want to remind folks, if you do have questions, please type them in the chat, and we'll try to get to as many as we can during the webinar, and we'll certainly follow up after the webinar with folks. So I'm going to talk about, just finish up with a little more of an extended demonstration of a few more parts of the tool. We like to talk about the tool, how it's useful, have our speakers share their experiences, but then also show you a little bit more of the tool with the minutes we have remaining. So I'm going to focus on the Bad River Band of Lake Superior tribe of Chippewa Indians. They're located on a 125,000-acre reservation in northern Wisconsin, right on the shores of Lake Superior. The tribe has over 7,000 members. The majority live off the reservation, but about 1,500 live on the reservation in one of 4 main communities. So during one of our more recent tribal meetings here at EPA Region 5 Chicago, we had the chance to do a training on the DDRT, and so we took it upon ourselves to look at one of their more recent emergency responses and natural disasters. And you can see in July 2016, there were multiple rounds of severe thunderstorms that hit that area of northern Wisconsin and the Bad River Reservation, and it resulted in widespread flooding and the death of 2 people. Using the DDRT, we started with the area in question, and one of the communities is called Odena, Wisconsin. You can see at the top of the screen is the search bar, so we zoomed into the community of Odena, Wisconsin. It's almost on the shore of Lake Superior. And the flood caused damage to homes and buildings, so the cleanup that had to follow would definitely require demolition contractors. You can see on the left-hand side is a search bar, and you can choose either to search all facilities. In this case, we chose to search for demolition contractors. Also included in that window is our drawing tool, either point, line, or polygon, and you can do things like search within 25 miles of a point. So with our point on the town of Odena, we searched for demolition contractors within 25 miles of that town. And I just want to also mention, you can see at the top middle of your screen a small eye icon, and that's our information, which you can get our documentation, such as metadata on the tool and data, as well as a tutorial, which is called DDRT Tips and Tricks. So if you're wanting to have a short tutorial, it will walk you through how to use the different aspects of this tool. So moving on, that search that we did for demolition contractors resulted in 2 facilities. You can see those are listed here. And you can see the type of information that we're tracking. It's very simple contact information. We're not tracking websites for these companies. It's basically address, city, state, zip code, phone number, as well as what type of facility, what type of materials or waste does that facility collect. And we have examples, as you are probably familiar of. There are facilities that are multiple kinds of recyclers. In this case, we have a demolition contractor, so the demolition contractor field says yes. But some of the facilities in the tool certainly say yes on more than one category. And then the other things that you can do if you're familiar with interactive maps, this is very common in those type of tools. You can get directions to this facility. You can view the data in a table and export it easily into a spreadsheet. And you can bring that into Excel. So we're trying to make sure the tool isn't just available and useful on the internet. You can also get the data out of it. Okay, and then one of those other tools that's available, Brandon already mentioned the usefulness of getting driving directions. And of course, we all in today's age expect our phone to tell us where to drive, whether we need to know it or not. This is showing directions from the town of Odena to this first demolition contractor. And the way we envision this, certainly can be helpful in a response or an exercise, but certainly in the planning stages of, this is showing you the map zoomed out around Odena, and this was a flood again. And this flood in particular flooded the main highway, Highway 2, running west to east through the reservation, and that is the primary road through this area. And so as we've been speaking and doing more outreach on the tool with debris management planners, they stress and emphasize that as you put together your plans or as you revise your debris management plans, your disaster management plans, you look at more than one route to your staging areas or to your waste disposal areas. And so what you can easily do with this tool is draw, as I have on the map in red, which creates a barrier, and it works very much like your direction software, again, that any of us have on a smartphone. And the directions automatically recalculate. And we just want to emphasize we really appreciate the experience and perspective of the tribes in our region, and certainly it speaks to all states and local folks that are in rural areas where it becomes vital and very important to know more than one route in and around your reservation, your county, your community, and this tool lets you very easily change the directions, add different barriers, set up examples of more flooded roads as this screenshot shows. All right, so I want to end the very, very brief demonstration there. As I mentioned, our tips and tricks link on the main page will give you a more fuller picture and tutorial. And I want to just end the webinar giving you kind of a picture of where we're headed. Our current tool contains data for 13 states in the Midwest, as you can see here. And this tool we started development of this tool 10 years ago in 2008. So we've gone through many technological changes, from Google Earth to Flex Viewers and now to ArcGIS Online and the tools it offers. And in the last year, really in the last 6 months, we've been able to expand the tool and start collecting data for other states around the country. I want to show our current expansion map. We are expanding the map. We're not going national yet, but we are in talks with our headquarters office as well as the regional, EPA Regional Sustainable Materials Management staff, and as well as the emergency management staff to see how we can get more feedback on this tool, improve it, and expand it nationally. Our current plan for expansion this fiscal year will be expanding to the states that are in Region 2. You can see New York and New Jersey, the Southeast states, Region 4, all the way over to Region 10, including Alaska and Hawaii, and as well including all of the territories, Puerto Rico, Virgin Islands, and the Pacific Islands. So we're very happy to have that support from the participating regions. They're reaching out to the states and to get the best data sources. We're also looking at ways to automate this. As you know, developing any tool, any long-term project, data sources change, technology changes, and we are looking this year to take advantage of opportunities for automating those data sources, automating future data updates of this tool. And also, I just want to finish by mentioning we're speaking with our headquarters offices that have developed tools that are similar or overlap in certain ways, and we're looking at ways to integrate those because we know, no matter how good a project is, no matter how good a tool is, if it's duplicating or if it's not looking out to how it can connect with other tools at US EPA, let alone our federal partners at FEMA and Army Corps, and all the good work that's being done at the state, local, and tribal levels. We're very interested in hearing about data and tools that you may have as well. I'm going to finish there and put this slide up. I think we're going to turn it back to Chris, who is going to check for a few questions.
Great. Thank you all for your comments and your presentation and the photos. We've had a lot of questions about the geographic coverage of the tool, Lucy, just what you ended on. And I just wanted to ask specifically future plans for those dark states, the New England states and the Mid-Atlantic states. We've had many questions about that. For the rest of you on the line, good news is that the tool is being expanded this year. So let's go with that, Lucy. Thank you.
Yeah, to answer that, we didn't start with a plan of, let's look at the area with the most extensive disasters, or comparing hurricanes in Florida and Puerto Rico with fires or volcanoes in Hawaii. It was really by the support of the EPA regions that came on, whether financial or program support, is how we started to expand. And the expansion has happened very fast, or the participation. It's really been in the last 6 months. So we haven't had like a 3-year plan to expand. It's really come together in the last 6 months. I will say we are looking forward to working with our headquarters office, the Office of Land and Emergency Management, as they finalize their disaster debris plan or their guidance. I know they're looking at ways to do outreach on that. And we are hoping, we're also looking at, we know several states and communities out there have a wonderful online geospatial presence. And so we're not, it makes it a lot easier to connect that data in if it's already online and in a geospatial format. We can just connect it as these interactive map viewers do. So I would say stay tuned. We've got our plan for this fiscal year, and we're hopeful that going into next year we'll have even more good news to share.
Great, thank you, Lucy. And I think we'd be recalcitrant to say a lot of it is funding. It's there's a cost to growing the tools, so stay tuned. Monty, I have a very specific question for you. There was a comment on one of your slides that it said Oneida Indian Nation, and was that the New York Oneida Band logo on your slide?
I don't believe it was. There is an Oneida Nation in Wisconsin, but I know they have, their relatives are in both New York and also Wisconsin.
Great, thank you, Monty. Getting back to the populating of the tool, do you use SIC codes to identify the disposal sites?
We really wanted to restrict the universe of data to active and permitted sites. We are aware in disaster responses, even closed landfills and things like that are reopened in extraordinary circumstances, such as after 9/11, the Fresh Kills landfill was reopened after being closed. But we really tried to restrict it, I guess, and start with a smaller known data set rather than just broadly looking at any business that classifies itself by SIC code.
Great. Have a couple of questions on salvage and debris recovery facilities, talking about how those facilities have been incorporated into the database.
Is there a particular question about that, I guess? Maybe thinking of like scrap metal handlers?
It just talked about, can we grow this sector, potentially increase the amount of material salvage and reuse?
Right, the reuse point brings up a really good point, that as our regional EPA regional offices have joined on to participate, we've certainly got feedback of additional data sets such as reuse centers or waste haulers as additional data sets that would be helpful to add to this tool. We're maintaining that list. We haven't made plans to add additional categories at this time, but certainly that feedback is very helpful and helps us kind of orient future changes.
Great. We have a kind of a general question. Is the main functionality of the tool an inventory and select tool for existing waste management facilities and contractors? Are there other key functions other than an inventory?
Yes, it is an inventory of data that's already available online. We're not calling anybody, we're just finding this information online, and we provide it with contact information and very accurate location information.
And that also speaks to the other tools we hinted at or mentioned that EPA headquarters has developed, and there have been other tools out there that are waste estimators or debris estimator tools. EPA has at least one of those for not only natural disaster debris, but chemical and biological and radiological debris. So our tool is primarily an inventory.
Great. I know you said, I know Region 5 has been working on the tool for 10 years plus. And I know obviously there's been a lot of work in the last 6 months, like you noted. What is the update cycle or the frequency of the data being updated?
We have a goal to update 33% of our records every year. So the goal is to have the entire data set updated every 3 years.
Great. Any comment about email addresses being part of the tool?
Right now, we don't have email addresses included in the contact information, but we do have phone numbers. So, and I mean, if you can see the name of the facility in the drop-down menu, you can always find out more information or give them a call and ask for an email address.
Great. This is an interesting question. Has there been any collaboration with Canadian government to expand tools with Canadian partners?
That's actually a really great idea. I think, like Lucy said, we've kind of been preoccupied in the last 6 months, even getting all these other states. But I think that's a really great question, because when the tool was first created in Region 5, we decided to add our border states a few years after that, because disasters are transboundary. If a disaster happens on the border of 2 states, one of them being in Region 4, the other being in Region 5, the more information that we have in the tool, the better. So I think that's a really great idea that maybe we will pursue a bit later.
Great. I have another question that might be outside the scope, but let me throw it out there for you. Do you know of a library of debris management plans that can be used as templates for jurisdictions creating their own debris management plans?
We definitely have a lot of information, and I mentioned headquarters planning for natural disaster debris guidance document. That is an excellent resource, and unfortunately it's not out yet, but I know it's going to be out very, very soon. And whoever that is, please shoot me an email. My name is Camille Lukey, and I'd be happy to share whatever information we have, and not only with EPA's information, but FEMA or any other, or Army Corps. I think that every federal agency has their own kind of input, so we definitely have some resources for you.
Great, thank you, Camille. I'm not quite sure what this question's getting at. See what you think. Is this something that may be used locally as a planning tool, even before the tool expands?
It could certainly give you a model of just some of the different debris management facilities that you would want to include in your debris management plans. And you could, if you're a county and you're out in Utah, for example, and your data's not in our tool yet, we won't have it up for several months. But you could certainly do a directory search yourself of your available data, your state's available data, to get within the county and around your county, pull that same type of information.
Great. Another question that we use a number of new disposal sites for debris disposal that are identified as needed close to the debris areas. Can these type of sites be added? So I'm assuming that's more of a temporary site.
Yeah, we're aware that the state of Florida, for example, has a very good geospatial library online, and they have a map of their staging areas where I think maybe they're temporary, but they're dedicated temporary or some status like that, where they've put them on their website to share. We don't have plans at this time to include staging area locations, but we can definitely, add it to our list as we look to future improvements.
Great. I have to say we've gotten a lot of folks saying they're excited about the tool based on current activities, specifically in the Puerto Rico area, Hurricane Maria. I think they are commenting, very much looking forward to having this type of data available. So thank you for expanding the tool. Any other comment on mapping resources being imported, something like the EJ screen or debris disposal mapping? Has that been considered? EJ meaning environmental justice screen.
Right. We do currently, if you go to our website, the EPA website that has the link that's on the screen right now, that's the main web page, and that will give you the link to the application that I demoed, as well as a link to the layers that are currently in ArcGIS Online, and those are shared publicly. So anyone with that software, ArcGIS Online, can go now and search for the DDRT layers. I believe you can type in DDRT or disaster debris, and those are publicly shared. So you could add those into a map and then also add in the EPA environmental justice layers and dynamically map, whatever layers you choose. And other map technologies are able to pull in these data layers as well because they're feature services on the internet.
Great. I have another question specifically along those lines. Is the tool able to integrate with Orion damage assessment tool?
I don't think that we've ever heard of that, but we just made a ooh noise. So yeah, I'd be happy to look more into that and find out what it is. So
great. That's what these webinars are for, growing our community. One other question I have is FEMA's involvement of the tool, a status of approved companies. Has anything been done along those lines?
Specifically for the demolition contractors that are included in our tool, we have used the FEMA data source, and it's now been turned over to a website called System for Award Management, which is a GSA federal-wide database of approved companies to do business with the federal government. But we have used that debris, I believe it's called Disaster Response Registry of approved contractors. That has been one of our primary sources for demolition contractors. We have also been talking with our FEMA Region 5 counterparts on ways to partner with them and maybe bring in additional data sources, definitely get their lessons learned on how they use those lists. And please be aware, our other lists are really not, they're not approved, licensed, I guess approved in the sense that any of our other categories are not approved facilities. They are active and permitted facilities, if you're talking about the landfills. But in the one case of the demolition contractors, that is FEMA's approved list. And so we go to them for the source since we know they're maintaining that information as most update to date.
That's great. One other question. If you were a facility that's a solid waste facility but wanted to be documented as an emergency recycling facility or debris storage facility, does that require any different information to be submitted for documenting this on the database tool?
Well, our facilities that are currently in the tool are not necessarily disaster debris specific. If they're a solid waste facility, you know, I'm not really sure what that means. Is that are they landfills or?
Right.
Basically, I'd feel free to send us a individual email, and maybe we can answer that when we find out more information.
Great, and this leads me to probably our final question for today on transfer, storage, and disposal facilities and how they're incorporated into the database.
They're currently not, besides the 3 types of landfills that we include, municipal solid waste, construction and demolition, and hazardous waste landfills, we do not include the whole universe of RCRA treatment, storage, and disposal facilities. That is a data set our EPA on-scene coordinators have asked us to think about including, and it is definitely on our list for future improvement. I feel like I'm coming down to a commercial here, but it's definitely on our list. And we'd be interested if other folks have other data sets they think would be helpful. It helps us prioritize them.
Mm-hmm.
Great. The final question that we were just asked about some estimates for the total of debris that is generated in a year. And Camille or Lucy, I think I would direct that question to our biannual report on municipal solid waste that's generated in a year. Do you have any other comments on a resource for that question?
I'm familiar that EPA's Office of Land and Emergency Management, they have a waste estimator tool out there. I think the question was talking about more of a reporting. Has EPA released any reports of or measures of debris managed? And I'm not aware of any right now.
No, I know that I'm also part of our measurement work group when it comes to solid waste issues. And I know that it has been talked about multiple times to try to get a better picture of the amount of waste after a disaster hits. I don't believe that we currently have that answer, you know, to be determined.
Great. And one last question came in before we close down. The EPA ECHO site has facilities lists. ECHO spelled ECCHO, the acronym. Have they been integrated?
That is definitely a concern that we've had here internally at EPA. Since it is a directory, we have a disclaimer on the tool, as you'll see on most tools, that EPA is not endorsing or encouraging business with any particular business. It is just a directory. But the other, you know, another perspective and main feedback point we've received is how can we include enforcement or compliance information on some of these, because certainly those of you on the call are aware and probably have experience with some of these debris management businesses are not always the best actors or may have a very poor compliance record, and it would be helpful to, where possible, see what that compliance record is. So we're talking with our enforcement office about the best way to include that. The main stumbling point we found is a lot of these facilities are not regulated. They're not all completely regulated by US EPA. Certainly some of them are regulated at the state level. And so we're looking at ways to share that compliance information with a web link. It would be very handy. Someone could click on a facility and you could get a link to their compliance report if it's on a US website, a US EPA website, or a state environmental website. We're definitely looking into that.
Great, thank you so much. So that concludes today's webinar. We wish to thank all our speakers for sharing our knowledge on the Disaster Debris Recovery Tool. But finally, we'd like to thank you for joining this month's SMM Web Academy and hope you continue to join us. It's for you that this program is designed. Please make sure you complete our evaluation. Give us your feedback on how we can meet your future needs. We will post the webinar audio in about a week, and the slides are in your handout box, and they will also be posted in about a week. Please join us next month for 2 webinars discussing food waste management, and look for an email after the new year with registration details. This concludes today's session. Thank you so much for joining us.